because they're extremely cheap. Now, how do you protect this combo? There are two ways that you can protect it. Force of will. Let's say they counter flash. It would be very difficult to counter this. They would need mental misstep, but during this time when this deck was legal, mental misstep was not a card. So during the time, there was very limited ways to interact. Force Spike was probably one of the better ways. So Force of Will, which also counters your opponent's Force of Will, should they have it. And Pact of Negation. Pact of Negation being a very, very strong card because you're going to win right then and right there. There's no reason to even consider paying the 5. You're going to win. Very strong deck. Definitely one of my favorite decks I played. The deck was legal for a short period of time. I want to say a few months before they banned the Flash, part of the Flash Hulk. And without Flash, the Hulk is really not that good. Fun combo in EDH though. And you can build around it using different combinations of cards as well. So leave me a comment below. Is this your favorite deck? Do you feel like this is the strongest deck? Definitely winning on turn 0 is pretty impressive in my opinion. Anyway, bye guys.
Our time has come.
Hey guys, today we are going to talk about a recent post by Mark Rosewater. Mark Rosewater is pretty much Magic the Gathering from the Wizards of the Coast side. And he mentioned snow dual lands, and do they fix the problem? It's at least a conversation. In the past, he's been very adamant about not having conversations about snow dual lands. So what is a snow dual land? A snow dual land is a land that has two types. So let's take Underground Sea. It's both a swamp and mountain. So it can produce a black and a blue. But in this case, it would be a snow-covered Underground Sea. It also could have a legendary type maybe, which would be really fantastic for EDHs. I don't see why we cannot have them for EDHs and just put a legendary tag on them. It would still make the regular dual lands much better than the snow dual lands because you can play 4 of those in a deck, and the legendary ones you could only really use in EDHs, as well as a budget version of the actual dual land. So it would still keep the people who speculated on Underground Seas. It wouldn't make them happy, but I feel like they wouldn't be that discontent either. And it would allow a lot more people to play formats that they're currently not in. And it would make everyone's EDH deck a lot better, to be honest. Even if you're playing the Underground Sea, having another option would be great. So let's take a look at this post. Again, he's been adamantly against these for a long time, and now he's asking the mechanics of what makes a fair land. From the very beginning, Magic the Gathering is unlike every other game. Every other game, Pokemon Energies, Weiss, Cardfight Vanguard, if they have energy, Kaijudo, if they have energy, the energy is really easy to get the best of, and it's not very expensive. In Magic, the most expensive part isn't the Planeswalkers, it is not the really cool cards that you can play for the epic effects in EDH. It is the land. The land are the most expensive part of any budget, essentially, for Magic the Gathering. And if you play Magic the Gathering, you know that. It's kind of annoying that every single new standard you have to pick up play sets of a new type of land, and they're always, initially $4 to $5. But like shock lands, fetch lands were up to $20 at one time. So if you were playing Mardu or 4 color and you needed 12 fetch lands, that's $240 just down the drain pretty much in land base. So I've always felt that was, mechanically speaking, it was a mistake to make lands the most vital part. When I first played this game, and lands were not that, it was not known that they would get worse, right? Like Underground Sea, we always assumed, okay, that's pretty cool, and we'll always at least have a Underground Sea until Revised left, and we realized, wait a second, lands are getting really bad right now, and the jump off wasn't that they all of a sudden got really bad. They were just significantly less useful, and even at that point, you had the argument, which is better. Anyway, overall, lands are something that I feel like they need to fix. Snow-covered dual lands is the fix, in my opinion. It is something that makes a lot of sense to me, and the reason it makes sense to me is from an EDH standpoint. It's really a budget play, and gets a lot of casual players involved. It makes whatever they're selling. Imagine as long as one of these sets, instead of having expeditions, we had snow-covered dual lands as special cards. That to me is more appealing than pulling a Chrome Mox expedition. I would much rather have something that has utility and can be played in pretty much everything that I want to play in EDH, or can be traded way easier than a Chrome Mox. No one's, in my opinion, expeditions are very hard to trade away for fair value, but a snow dual land would not. And I don't think it breaks the reserve list. I feel like investors who are heavily invested into dual lands, they should be happy. It would bring more interest. It would bring more interest to a dying formats or vintage and legacy. Anyway, leave me a comment below. Do you guys like snow dual lands? Do you feel like it's a good concept, or maybe it's a little too much? Anyway, bye guys.
Guys, Desolator Magic here, and it's time to touch on a topic that everybody's been kind of rolling around, and everybody has their own take on it. In fact, I think even I'm going to contradict what I said in a previous article, because I think I've finally figured it out. I looked briefly at all the top decks right now, and then I looked at all the kind of secondary decks that a lot of people are playing at my local gaming store, and, you know, a couple of the decks that they've heard about if they played at other stores. Kind of just took it all in. What are people playing at the pro level? What are people playing at the not so good? One thing is for certain, nobody's having fun. Nobody has a good opinion of Standard right now, according to the last survey taken by Wizards. And of course, F&M attendance is down. That's not exactly a secret. So, what is fundamentally broken in Standard right now? Some people have said the win on turn 4 decks. That is absolutely a huge portion of it, if not the majority of it. Fortunately, nobody at my LGS is playing those stupid decks. There's no Metalwork Colossus, no Emrakul, Ulamog, none of that garbage. Nobody's playing anything like that. What they are playing is blue-white control, or black-blue control, or mono-blue control, or control. Doesn't matter. And then you've got, you know, Murder, then you've got Ruinous Path. Here's the thing, though. Everybody says, oh, there's too many control cards. Not really. I mean, if you look at how many control cards were in Theros, there was kill cards coming out years. I mean, even back to, like, the Doomblade times. There was so many clones of that, and then you had, like, you know, Murderous Cut later on. There's never been any shortage of removal, bounce back to hand, and counter spells. In fact, I would dare say that they could print double the volume of control cards that exist right now, and it still wouldn't really be the problem. So the sheer number of control cards is not the problem. I have finally realized why decks are so synergistic, why they work, why the matches are lost so quickly, and why control decks can do so much damage. And that's really what it is, because if you think about the trade-off with control decks, it's damage. It always has been damage. The problem with control, especially counter spells, is you're trading card for card. But let's throw kill spells in there too, because I do consider them control. I'm trading one of my cards for one of your cards. So early game, probably not a good idea. Late game, you know, maybe I'm paying 2 to negate a 6-cost Planeswalker. So that's why control is a thing. That's why people don't just say, oh, it's just trading, who cares? Now, the one thing that people need to understand is one of the most annoying things in all of Magic is hand disruption. It's so bad some of the pros are calling for Inquisition of Kozilek and Thoughtseize to be just banned outright for Modern because they're that detrimental. Here's the thing, though. On the ladder of annoyingness and effectiveness, that's the bottom rung. I mean, I do agree with them. Those cards are just a menace and need to go. But other than that, okay, let's see. I get rid of one of your 7 cards on turn 1, and it's my choice, plus I get to see your hand. I mean, that's really unfair. So you lose a card, but I lost a card, so now we're both at 6. So in the place of my Inquisition of Kozilek, or Thoughtseize, or Duress, or Despise, or whatever, I could have had a really powerful card, like a 2-1 for 1, or a, 1-4 Death Toucher for 2. Something really good that would have helped me. But instead, I'm trading that off to get rid of one of my cards, go down to 6, to make you go down to 6, and get rid of your most powerful card, theoretically. So it's actually, a 1-to-1 trade that's not intrinsically unfair. What's worse than a 1-to-1 trade? A 1-to-1 trade and they lose their turn, which, in Modern especially, but in Standard to some degree, is what happens. Let's say they pay 3 mana for something. That's pretty much all their mana, unless the game's really dragging. Turn 4, 5, 6, that might be 100% of the mana, or effectively all their mana. If they have 4 or 5 lands on the field, but everything in their hand costs 3, their turn is over, they can no longer cast anything. So they cast, a card, and then you counter it. Okay, it's a 1-for-1 trade, except they burned all their mana and have effectively lost their turn. Now, they don't lose their combat phase, but, they lost a card and mana, we'll say. Mana that could have been spent on something else, whereas the mana from, like, a Thoughtseize, you never spent it in the first place. So what's even worse than a 1-for-1 trade where they basically lose their turn? A 1-for-1 trade where you didn't have to leave your mana open and lose your turn because of it. Now maybe you played something for 3 and then you left 2 open for a negate. Okay, but it's not always how it works, you can't count on that. So now, if you think about it, a full-blown cancel, which is, 3 mana, you might have had to skip your turn by not spending any of your mana, and then made them lose their turn, and you're still 1-for-1, you're still dead equal. Okay, so what's worse? Let a permanent enter the battlefield, then exile it. And if you're wondering where bounce it back to hand comes in, it doesn't. That's just crap. You burnt a card and they get their card back the next turn, basically. It doesn't work. But if you exile it, okay, now they lost the mana on that turn that they could have spent on something else, and 1 card. You lost the mana from your turn and 1 card, but you didn't have to lose your turn ahead of time to sit on the mana. And of course that can backfire if they cast some dummy spell that you don't want to counter. Or I suppose if they cast nothing. So you're probably thinking, okay, exiling, what could possibly be worse? So far it sounds pretty balanced. You're both spending 1 card and you're both spending mana. Unless you're talking like Quarantine Field, which can, do multiples, or like a board wipe. But we're talking just point control. Just straight up, I'm, 1-to-1ing you. Well, that's what's so broken. Look at the card Spell Queller. I've been saying it ever since it was spoiled, before it was even in Standard. It is broken and it is unfair. Let's say they cast a good creature like Thalia. She's pretty good. 3/2 for a striker. All your crap comes in tapped. Very devastating to the board state. Oh, but you drop in a Spell Queller. So now they're -1 creature, you're +1 creature, and you burned their turn. And you didn't really burn your turn because if you were just sitting on the 3 mana, you probably were going to use that to summon a creature anyway. Now this is all in theory and every game's different, but hopefully you get my point. There is no downside. You're just playing control and then just dominating. And then it's a flying creature. That is like the holy grail of blue decks. So you get a flyer, that's almost guaranteed damage, especially if what they tried to cast was a flyer. Plus, if they tried to remove one of your creatures, so they're trying to trade one of their cards for one of your cards, and some of their mana right now for the mana that you spent on it initially. Oops, you drop in a Spell Queller. Now, not only are you not down a creature, you're +1 a creature, and they're down 1 whole turn and 1 card. Spell Queller is broken, it is unfair, it needs to go. And they knew that, so they said, oh, well, you get the spell back and you can cast it for free when Spell Queller dies, which it never does. Flying and all. Now, if they made it a 1/1 on the ground, I'd kind of get that. It would still be massively unfair, but at least it wouldn't be able to then go on and hit you and hit you and hit you. So when you counter a spell, when you use any type of control magic at all, kill spell, anything, doesn't matter, you're sacrificing a little bit of your time, your turn, and your mana and your cards to stop them from doing what they're doing. You should not then also at the same time accelerate the total attack power of your line. That is fundamentally against how Magic works, and that's why anybody running Spell Queller is just dominating, absolutely dominating. So why is Blue-White Spirits not really a thing anymore? Well, I mean, with Reflector Mage and Bounce and Panharmonicon, it actually kind of is. I think if you look at the pro level, it's kind of like a second-rate deck, but it's still quite good. But that type of deck kind of loses to turn 4 Emrakul. If they control your turn, my god, they can cast something out, quell it itself, and then like sacrifice your Selfless Spirit. I mean, they can just like destroy your entire game. You know, if they get out an Ulamog, oh, you probably needed those 2 permanents, I would think. So all these win on turn 4 or dominate the game and effectively win on turn 4 decks, those are absurd. Now, I didn't look too close at the Delirium decks, but from what I've seen, they're a little bit too control heavy too. So it's not just literally the card Spelled Queller that's ruining Standard right now, it's in general creatures that are spells, or I should say spells that are also creatures. That has always been one of the very, very subtle, most powerful things in all of Magic. I mean, if I throw out a 3/3 for 3, good for me. You know, it's a vanilla creature. 3/3 for 3 with First Strike, that's pretty powerful. Or Death Touch, Lifelink, you know, it's beneficial, it's a good creature. But if I take a creature and throw it out, and then it's also a counter spell, that doesn't work. That is unfair. I don't care how much it costs. It is unfair. I shouldn't say that. If it costs like 8 for like a 2/2 flyer, an 8-cost counterspell, okay, that's appropriate, but unfortunately, that's not what they made most of these cost. Now, just look at the ETB and on-cast effect creatures. It's almost, if not the majority of creatures in Standard right now. I mean, everybody does something. They generate energy, they bounce something back to hand, they draw a card, they scry, whatever, and some of, you know, scry 1 on enter, whatever, that's nothing new, that's not that devastating. But it all comes together. And then you've got, you know, the ongoing triggers, which are the most powerful thing in all of Magic, period. Anything that can happen recurring where you don't have to pay for it, it's the most powerful effect. There is nothing more powerful other than, you know, stupid stuff like you win the game or something. You know, like get to 40, like win the game. Okay, that would be a more powerful effect. But in general, for card design, that is the most powerful thing you can possibly do in Magic. You could be top decking, you could be out of mana, they could blow apart all your lands, you're sitting there with nothing to do. Oh, but during your upkeep, you know, destroy a creature or something like that. During your upkeep, draw a card. There you go. So any kind of passive, you know, triggered ability like that that happens over and over and over the rest of the game, you're good. I could name a boatload of creatures that have those right now. So mix that with ETB, mix that with on-cast, mix that with ones that have control effects. It's just too much. You can't have the creatures also be spells. It's too powerful. It lets people build too good of decks. And that by itself is what is broken in Standard right now. If you took out a whole bunch of the problem cards, which it's a whole bunch, I mean, they just fundamentally designed it wrong, it would be a lot more fair then. When you consider that Reflector Mage is one of the weaker spell creatures, oh my gosh. And then you've got spell lands, don't forget about that. I mean, Sandstone Bridge, drop that in, +1/+1 Vigilance. Oops. I mean, then you've got, like, you know, the one that turns into Ormondal, the 9/7 Demon. That one's no fun. It's a little harder to get that one off, but if your lands are spells, and your creatures are spells, and your spells are spells, plus your spells are creatures with Awaken, I mean, it's just too much. There's no anything. Everything is everything, and everything can do everything. It just breaks Magic. Creatures should be creatures, spells should be spells, you know, control should be 1-to-1 the way it always is. And once in a while, in a couple sets, you print a couple really good exceptions, like a really good ETB effect, or, you know, just something like that. But they went and printed it on, God, probably 50 to 100 creatures. Like, for real, look at it. Look up every single legal creature in the Gatherer. Almost every single one has an ability. And the vanilla creatures are just filler like they always would be. Nobody's going to play them anyway. They're just to, you know, bulk up the numbers and be a werewolf or whatever. Oh, speaking of that, let's talk about flip cards. Normally you'd throw out a creature, and if you wanted to get bigger, you'd have to burn a spell on it. Oh no, now it's all self-contained, because remember, creatures are spells and spells are creatures, and up is down, and woohoo, welcome to Magic. So if you want your werewolf to get bigger, all you have to do is literally nothing, and it flips. I mean, it's almost like a joke at this point. Like, I get heroic. Okay, you're doing a boost spell, or you're doing, you know, something, making it flying, whatever. Also, you get a +1/+1. Okay, heroic, cool. But to make a creature get bigger and gain more abilities by doing nothing on purpose, which is what flips the original werewolves from SOI, that is just unreal. Usually, if you're gonna make a creature bigger and more powerful, you gotta pay like 3 mana to do it. You gotta get like some equipment out. You gotta get, you know, some kind of artifact out where you pay 2, tap it, and give something 3/3 till end of turn or something like that. So I think in the future they really need to tone that down, because if they made it more granular where creatures are creatures and they have evergreen combat abilities, so you got the complexity, it's not boring, and then spells are spells. Maybe have a couple, you know, rare mythic land things with abilities that do cool stuff, because that's a staple, you know, you can't be without that. But stop with the ETB effects, and what really drove it over the cliff was Panharmonicon. Oh, now you get 2 spells for every creature. Reflector Mage plus Panharmonicon was a disaster. Also, there's one more thing ruining Standard, the complete and utter lack of hexproof creatures. But honestly, if they put in hexproof creatures, I think it would only get worse. I mean, I would have a little bit more flexibility to dodge control, because really there's no answer for control except for more control right now. There's no hexproof, there's no all my spells of hexproof, cannot be countered. I think there's like 2 spells that cannot be countered, and I think I could name maybe 3 creatures with hexproof. I would think there's more, but if I can't name them, they're not a very significant or good creature, obviously. Oh, and to make matters even worse, the great equalizers are just gone. They're just gone. I mean, you're probably thinking, oh, Fumigate. No, that nukes both of you. You're back to Symmetry. I'm talking about Windstorm. Oh, you're running